Baseball isn't just numbers, numbers, numbers.
This game is not being played on computers.
You don't do that with a bunch of statistical gimmicks.
You don't put a team together with a computer.
We're talking weighted runs created plus,
expected WOBA,
his sweet spot rate,
defensive runs above average,
average exit velocity,
barrel rate,
xFIP,
BABIP,
SIERA.
We are
Above Replacement Radio.
And welcome to Above Replacement Radio. We're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Chianti. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Kern. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing very well today. We took a week and a half long hiatus from the pod. I was on vacation this weekend. You were covering some high school playoffs down in Central Virginia. But we are back. It's basically a 2-episode week after a 0-episode week. So we have quite a bit to talk about today because a lot has happened in the last 10 days. Something that has continued, though, is Aaron Judge, our number one player in Major League Baseball going into 2024.
I'm glad you said our, because I didn't realize the lack of consensus there and the fact that pretty much no big conglomerates had him number one heading into the season.
No, I think MLB Network had Acuna. Our F4 draft had Acuna. There were a lot of mixed opinions, but
yeah, I believe ESPN and CBS Sports had Acuna. I know ESPN did in their top 100, but it was us and Foolish Bailey. So shout out to us for, I think that's looking good right now.
I feel good about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Aaron Judge has had quite the month plus before this most recent 27 game span and all these stats heading into this past Wednesday, June 5th to be exact. But Judge had a sub 800 OPS prior to the season. I imagine much better underlying numbers.
Sub 700.
Sub 700 at one point this season, but prior to the last 27 games, it was sub 800. But over the last 27 games, he is hitting 400, which, obviously there's more to that than that. He is slugging 1022 with a 1551 OPS. He's been incredible. What have you been seeing out of Aaron Judge?
Yeah, you said his last 27, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, my computer's frozen right now, but I was going by his last 35, in which he had a 1424 OPS, which is 2 points better than Barry Bonds' 2000. Look to my right to confirm that, as his baseball reference page is on my wall, as always.
Yeah, for sure. I'll keep going talking about these last 27. I'm sure you can add more with the 35 game span because, no matter how you slice it, Aaron Judge has been doing incredible. In his last 27 games, Aaron Judge leads the MLB in home runs, doubles, walks, runs scored, and wins above replacement. Out of 178 qualifiers in the span, he leads an average on base percentage, slugging, and OPS. He has the most wins above replacement by 1.4. That's pretty insane to have that margin between 1 and 2 in a 27 game span. It's pretty crazy to have that in a 162 game span, but he's doing that. He's gaining that separation in a 27 game span. Also has the highest slugging by 255 points, highest OPS by 372 points. So he's been not only the best player in baseball over the past pretty much month, because this span started on May 5th. He's been in his own league and then some over the last month.
I think so many people have really separated 2022 Judge from the rest of his career. Judge has never really left 2022 mode except for in April of 2024. He was very much on track to kind of repeat what he did in 2022 last year before he quite literally hit a wall in Dodger Stadium. And he's been on a unheard of run in the last 3 seasons, 2.5 seasons, whatever you want to call it. There was a lot of Shohei hype from 2021 to 23 when he was doing both, as there should have been. Aaron Judge has been such an undisputed best hitter in the game for 3 years now, and I think there's so much like the question is how long does he keep this very specific level of play up? And is there any reason to believe it's stopping anytime soon? Because the answer right now, of course, is no. I mean, he's at the peak of it right now. He has a 1500 OPS in the last, and like I don't know. I mean, it seems like I don't know what he needs to do to undisputed number one when Shohei Ohtani isn't playing two-way, because that's the only thing that really truly should be stopping him, but it's not happening right now.
Yeah, for sure. You bring up a good point there of like, people kind of remember him for 2022. People sort of remember him for his rookie season because of how historic that was too. And I think a large percentage of that, or a large part of that, has to do with the count numbers. Obviously, the count numbers are there. 52 home runs his rookie year, 62 home runs 2 years ago. But yeah, when you look at rate statistics and especially underlying rate statistics, he's, basically had the same year 3 years in a row. I know it's been a short year this year and a little bit shortened last year, but when you look at the exit velocities, expected numbers, and the actual rate numbers, it all looks very similar. Like when you like, luckily with Baseball Savant, with you have that on the surface, on the those on the surface numbers right in front of you when you click on him. OPS 1111, 1019, 1084. Slugging 686, 613, 662. It's been elite the whole time. It's just he got lost in the shuffle last year because he was on the IL for about 8 weeks or so. But if he played 157 game, or I'll just say his 157 game pace, and I say 157 because he played that many in 2022. His 157 game pace for home runs in 2023 was 55 home runs. We would have been like, if he had never hit the IL, we'd be like, oh my God, he did it again. Pretty much. He maybe didn't set that record, but he's around that same rate. And people just didn't recognize that heading into this year, but they should have, because he was doing, he was at a very similar level last year as he was to this year. And I guess what he's doing last year, or in 2022 to 2023, and I guess this year he is he's sort of vindicating that sentiment.
I feel like we need to also appreciate Aaron Judge for having the ability to squash the injury prone narrative that used to exist around him. He missed some time in 2018, but that was because he got hit by a pitch, so not his fault. He missed some time in 2019, and that was kind of the more lingering stuff. He went down in 2020 for a little bit, and when you went down for 2 weeks in 2020, it's amplified so much more because it's the equivalent of going down for like a month, basically, in the form of a regular season, maybe even like a month and a half. But he really has not had a serious injury prone season since then. He's been, yeah, like you mentioned, 157 games played in 2022. And yeah, he was injured in 2023, but again, a freak play, not a lingering thing. And he said the toe is going to impact him for the rest of his career, but it certainly hasn't affected how he's played. So I think there's also a lot of appreciation to be shown in the fact that he's been able to stay on the field when so many players have that injury prone narrative and just can't really shake it. Guys like Mike Trout, Royce Lewis, Byron Buxton, like so many guys that just unfortunately, Jacob DeGrom, who have had, you hear the annoying people at the beginning of the season being like, oh, well, he's going to do great until he gets injured. And then they actually do. Aaron Judge used to kind of have that as well, and he's squashed it.
Yeah, for sure. And I was kind of on that boat a little bit, at least probably after 2020, 2019-ish. I knew the 2018 injury was definitely a fluke because, as you mentioned, I think it was a forearm fracture or something like that from a hit by pitch. Obviously there's really nothing you can do about that. But I think it was more just, if Aaron Judge didn't look like Aaron Judge and didn't have that, body composition of Aaron Judge, being a 6'7", 280-pound guy with probably very little body fat, I don't think that narrative would be as strong with him back then, because we've seen his teammate, Giancarlo Stanton, who has a very similar build, kind of never really defeat that narrative, or at least for a few years, he had that narrative around him and it was pretty accurate. But yeah, so I think it was kind of easy to kind of put that on him. But yeah, luckily for just the baseball universe, he's knock on wood, avoided lingering injuries since 2020. Like that's very cool. That's pretty good for baseball. And I guess it's a hats off to him for being able to stay healthy, because I imagine it's a little bit harder for him to stay healthy than, like, I don't know, David Fletcher. Just based on
Noted pitcher David Fletcher, by the way.
yeah, he's just the first small guy I thought of, or like Jose Altuve, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I imagine it's a little bit harder for him considering everything he has to carry around. But yeah,
Yeah, especially as an outfielder that is, that large of a human.
yeah, a guy who and doesn't get a lot of DH time. I don't think. I think maybe once every, I don't know, 9-10 games he gets a DH day, probably less.
Yeah.
So or probably more, once every maybe 19 or 20 games. But yeah, it's very cool. I actually have some more stats on Aaron Judge over the last 27 games. Out of so
Hold on, I gotta stop you. I'm sure you're about to say this. Do you know what his barrel rate is in the last
in the last how many games?
35 games?
Is it
And barrel rate as in barrels per batted ball.
um is it in the upper 40s?
It's near the 40s. Or it's in the 40s, not the upper 40s though.
Oh, like 44%, something like
It's
that.
42%.
Yeah, over his last 27, it is 49%.
Yeah, that's
Um,
awesome. Half of his batted balls are
here's
barreled.
here's the funniest thing is in this 27 game span, he is underperforming his expected slugging by 109
Yeah,
points.
yeah.
He out of 91 hitters with 400 plus pitches seen in this span, he's the fourth unluckiest difference in slugging and expected slugging.
I
So
thought it was gonna be like, oh, he's like 3 points off of his expected slugging.
no, he is underperforming his expected slugging by 109 points.
It's so
Um,
cool.
So I think we've talked about this before with Judge and maybe a few other guys of his caliber, like Yordan Alvarez. Um, they're naturally going to underperform their expected slugging because the outfield plays so deep and they're such fly ball hitters that a lot of the hard hit balls that they hit deep into the outfield are not caught. Or if it weren't them at the plate, the outfielders wouldn't be so deep and they wouldn't be catching them. I think that's the case with Aaron Judge. Is he's just, the outfield is set deep against him and he just hits it to them because that's kind of what he does. Also, Aaron Judge's average exit velocity in this span is 99.7 miles per hour. The player with the next most among the 91 hitters with 400 plus pitches seen has a average exit velocity of 95.2 miles per hour. So he is 4.5 miles per hour above the next strongest hitter average exit velocity wise. He also has 33 barrels in the span. The player with the next most, who happens to be Juan Soto, has 20. He has a 49% barrel rate, as we just mentioned. The next highest among the hitters with, I believe, 50 plus batted balls in the span has a 33% barrel rate. He's 16 percentage points above that. And Aaron Judge, sort of in this window of time where he's been dominating, he's had three different occasions of or three 27 game spans, with all of them obviously having a lot of overlap, but three 27 game spans with 15 plus home runs and 12 plus doubles. No other player in baseball history has done that. 15 plus home runs and 12 plus doubles in 27 games. Aaron Judge has become the only player to do that. So yeah, he is absolutely dominating. And yeah, it makes us feel pretty good that we put him number one instead of another guy.
Yeah, I mean, the fun part of this, and like I mentioned, like we don't really know if it's ever going to end, when it's going to end. I mean, he's 30 at 2022 was going to be like a one-time thing, and it's been what he's been for 3 straight years now.
Yeah, it's nuts, and in a lot of ways, he's been better than he was in 2022. Since his barrel rate has incrementally gone up each year since 2022. His average exit velocity has gone up since 2022. All of his or his expected
His sweet spot rate has gone up since 2022.
his sweet spot rate, his expected slugging has gone up, his hard hit rate has gone up. Strikeouts are down since 2022.
By 0.1.
By 0.1%, but it is down, and at least it hasn't gone up with all these exit velocity increases and barrel rate increases. His strikeout rate has failed to really go up at all. Yeah, like it's crazy. So I guess there is some semblance of sustainability to this. And if so long as he doesn't have any freak injuries, he's someone where you're thinking he might be able to put up 50 a year for a few years, home run wise.
Yeah, I mean, like he might. Yeah, like this is something that we haven't seen on this consistent of a basis. Like I'm thinking since Sammy Sosa, right? Because he had how many? He had how many seasons of like 60 home runs? He
Three
had
with 60.
And he didn't lead the league in any of them.
Oh yeah, right. Because he did one in 98 and one in 2001.
Yeah, and the other was 99. I
Yeah.
think McGuire got him that year as well.
Yeah, he has 360 homer seasons and 450 homer seasons.
Yeah,
Judge
it's
is at
pretty.
Judge is at 250 homer seasons, and he's on pace for another. And obviously he's got more in the tank. So yeah, it's pretty exciting from a baseball perspective. From a Red Sox fan perspective, obviously it stinks, but we knew this was going to happen. Um, we know how good Aaron Judge is.
Also, like as Red Sox fans, it's like I can't even like really like it's the Yankees, of course, you have to do it as a Red Sox fan, but it's like we got to worry about our own team first because ownership is not
Right. Yeah.
like I can't feel the same passion I had against the Yankees for my entire life when I need to I like the team is not good. They've been mid for 4 years now.
Yeah.
Like I can't put that much energy into it when my own team isn't doing so.
Yeah. No, I get that. I get that. I haven't felt that same like vigor seeing you know, um, seeing the Yankees almost playing 700 ball. Um,
Mhm.
but but yeah, anything more on Aaron Judge?
That's all I have on Judge. Off topic, I'm watching their game right now. Blue Jays City Connects are really, really nice.
That is you. I feel like you're in the minority there.
No, I love them. I mean, fun fact, I was actually in Toronto this weekend. I went to the Blue Jays game on Sunday. They didn't wear the City Connects because they wear them during night games because the theme of it is night mode. Um, but like I saw them in the team store and seeing the jerseys, like they're nice. And also Toronto skyline is beautiful. So it fits with the theme. Also like they were promoting the heck out of them because I happened to be in Toronto in the very weekend that they unveiled them. And like there was billboards across the town with like the jerseys. There's Toronto has its own little like Times Square kind of thing, and there was a big promotion for it, and I like it. I think they're the best ones that have released this year. By the way, like I completely forgot MLB is bringing back Players Weekend, but they're not doing uniforms, which, to be honest, I'm okay with given the entire Fanatic situation of this year.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot
Like
that can go wrong.
that was a scandal waiting to happen.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. Like just a misplacement or just a misinterpretation.
A
Everything.
misspelling of someone's nickname.
Yeah. Everything could go down the drain.
Yeah.
But yeah, a team that you're not going down the drain, but has been struggling. I believe they're actually losing right now, unless the White Sox lost their lead, which would not be a surprise, to be honest. But the Chicago Cubs, at one point were um very much in the mix with the Brewers at the top of the NL Central. Now they're not really, not saying that they are, permanently out of the race, but they've set themselves back a little bit. They've lost 14 of their last 20, potentially 15 of their last 21 if they lose to the White Sox tonight. Yeah, and just a team we expected to win the division coming into this year. I think a lot of people expected to, make an improvement this year after what seemed to be a preview last year what have you been thinking about the Cubs' struggles as of late?
Yeah, I mean, for the last like month and a half, it's been the offense since April 27th, which was that was the day that they lost 17-0 to the Red Sox. Since then, they have, I believe, an 85 team weighted runs created plus. They haven't gotten a lot of offense from guys like Dansby Swanson, who has been up and down the injured list since then. They've given a lot of plate appearances to guys like Miles Mastroboni, who has struggled offensively. Seiya Suzuki hasn't been the same since he came off the IL. There are other names as well. I wasn't able to pull them up because my computer froze and I lost everything I had. But another thing to note, I don't have the exact numbers, but I looked at the bat tracking metrics, and the Cubs since April 27th have been towards the bottom. I think bottom 5 in blasts per contact and swing, and squared up per contact and swing. So they're not making the right kind of contact. They're not, whether it be from their power hitters or their contact hitters or whoever, they're still like Cody Bellinger's still hitting well, and that's pretty cool. But they just have not been making the right kind of contact.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And yeah, they in their last 20 games, specifically heading into Wednesday, they were last in slugging, last in OPS, last in weighted runs created plus. So their offense has definitely lacked. I'm trying to see what their ISO is, because that would kind of make sense with the blasts if they were, toward the bottom in that as well, because yeah, the power has not been there. That's illustrated by them being last in slugging for sure. Where would their ISO be? Bottom 5. They're bottom 5 in ISO, so
Yeah.
there's that as well. And that's with a low batting average too. It's harder to have a lower ISO when you have a low batting average, because it's slugging percentage minus batting average. Yeah, with the Cubs, when we talked about the Cubs coming into this year, we talked about how, they don't really have a lot of star power in the lineup. They don't really have a lot of crazy holes. But when holes start to appear and guys start slumping, there's not really many guys who can save the lineup and make them, productive again. Like, I think Ian Happ's been doing pretty well over the last few weeks, but that's really the only guy who's kind of salvaged anything there. So it just seems like, if a couple guys slump in that Cubs lineup, it's a bit of an issue, because there's not really any stars that are gonna, pull them out of it.
Yeah, the offense has been troublesome. I know that the Steele has also struggled since he came off the IL. They've faced Paul Skeens twice, so maybe that has something to do with it.
Yeah, they did get 6 innings of no hit action from Paul Skeens with 11
who
strikeouts. So
pitched tonight.
yeah, he pitched tonight. He
Gave
made
up. He had a B WAR outing for sure. Gave up 2 home runs, but got the win. Was fine if with run prevention, not great, but was fine.
Yeah, I know we're talking about the Cubs here, but this is a weird tangent. I have a
Yeah.
a weird this is the maybe my most like pushing glasses up the nose, like technically, the guy that pushes the glasses up the nose and says, well, technically, this is my almost nerdiest moment. But so it was a big deal that Paul Skeens made Shohei Ohtani whiff 3 times
Oh, I
in
saw
a
your
row.
tweet. Yeah.
Like, so obviously Shohei Ohtani, he's one of the best hitters in baseball. But there's a difference, like, it's because he has a lower than average, or an above average whiff rate, like a worse than average whiff rate. It's not really crazy impressive. It's impressive to do that to any MLB hitter. I'm not saying that Paul Skeens is like some bum, but it's because if it was another guy with a 35th percentile whiff rate, we wouldn't really be talking about it this way. I looked at some numbers, like Jake Berger has a 37th percentile whiff rate. If Skeens did that to Jake Berger, then it wouldn't be a big deal, and we wouldn't do anything, even though it would technically be more impressive, because Berger has technically been better at making contact with the ball than Shohei Ohtani this year. Obviously, like, avoiding home runs or avoiding extra base hits is more impressive with Ohtani, but in terms of
Which
making
Paul Skeens did not do.
yeah, that's true. So, but in terms of making guys swing and miss, it would be most impressive if he did that to someone who like has a really high contact rate. That's what I'm
I
trying
will
to say.
say, for what it's worth, I also looked at some numbers tonight. So Paul Skeens got Shohei Ohtani swinging on 3 straight pitches. It was a swinging strike, foul tip, swinging strike. So we basically count that as, I mean, we count that as 3 swing strikes, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
sure.
what that is. And then his second at bat, it went swing strike, home run, with a couple balls in between. But 5 whiffs out of him in those 2 at bats, and he faced him a third time. I don't think he got him to whiff at any point though. Let's see, foul ball, yeah, ball in play, no out. I don't think they faced each other for the rest of the night. Yeah, but I also ran some numbers, did some tests. Since 2021, Paul Skeens I think is like the Shohei to whiffs 5 times in a single game. So that's also pretty good.
That is very good. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, obviously it's impressive, but I think people ooh and ah at that because of the name and not necessarily because he's like the
Yeah,
best at making contact.
that's true, but also like understandably so.
Yeah, and it's if he did do that to Stephen Kwan or Luis Ariz, I don't think anyone would really care. So it's a moment to celebrate a guy. I'm not gonna completely poo-poo it, but it's me pushing my glasses uh, up the bridge of my nose and screaming at everybody trying to have fun.
I wonder why people don't like analytics.
Yeah, yeah, no, it really is the guy in the corner meme of
Yeah,
they don't know Shohei Ohtani has a 35th percentile whiff rate. Um, but yeah, no, I understood why it was a big deal when the farm workers struck out Babe Ruth, but Babe Ruth did strike out. He did lead the league in strikeouts 5 times, so it
that's
wasn't
true.
it wasn't that impressive. Go try to get go try getting Joe DiMaggio. He's a guy didn't strike out that
Yeah,
much.
he didn't strike out like ever.
Yeah, no, never. Um, but yeah, so that was my tangent.
Try
But
getting Nap Lajoie.
yeah, for sure.
He struck out like 10 times a year.
Try getting Cap Anson. I'm pretty sure that was when the rules were you like got to pick when it was a strike or not.
Yeah.
You got to make your own strike zone.
Yeah, look, I get you struck out Shohei Ohtani, Paul Skeens. I get that your 100-mile-per-hour fastball blew him away 3 straight times, but can you get Cap Anson for me?
Yeah.
Like that's how I know it's legit.
Yeah, exactly. He had a way lower strikeout rate than Shohei Ohtani. Um, but I actually have another thing to add because when I sent out the tweet, I imagined myself, I had imaginary arguments with imaginary people because I didn't think people would react, but I imagine like, what if I was a larger scale person and had to talk to people about that? Whiff rate, I don't think whiff rate is really analytical at all. It's the percentage of
No, it's not.
it's the percentage of swings you swing and miss. That's
I
less
mean, people that hate analytics love talking about people that strike out a lot.
true, but also like it's literally two numbers. It is a numerator and a denominator. It is the amount of times the denominator is the amount of times you swing. The numerator is the amount of times you swing and miss. So it's literally less analytical it's less complicated than batting average. Batting average,
Yeah.
you have to determine if it's an error or if it's an at bat. I would say that's less analytical. So
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that don't understand the difference between plate appearances and at bats.
yeah, yeah. Whiff
Whiff
rate.
rate, just is that a swing? Sometimes you have to appeal to the umpire, but
We always
it's
know if it's a swing.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, that's the last thing I'll say on that. But
yeah. Going back, I'm glad you went on that tangent because that did give me an opportunity to get some more numbers on the Cubs. Since April 27th, which is my arbitrary date of choice. They have an average exit velocity of 88.1 miles per hour. That is tied for the 4th lowest in the majors over that time. Only the Reds, Nationals, and Rays rank worse. They are tied with the Blue Jays and Cardinals.
yeah, for sure. It's yeah, and I think part of that has to do with kind of how their lineup is built. Outside of maybe Christopher Morel, you don't really see
Or
a lot of
Bellinger. But yeah, I guess he's not an exit velo guy, right?
yeah, you don't see a lot of like 30 homer potential out of anyone else.
Mhm.
Guys like, you know, they do have a decent amount of guys where their skill is putting the ball in play, like Nico Horner, for example. Cody Bellinger kind of became that last year, but yeah, in terms of really getting the big swing, they just haven't had it. Over the last, and it's hurt them over the last month or so. Um, yeah, anything more on the Cubs?
Please hold. They
Um,
have they have the lowest percent of fly balls going straight away, which is actually a good thing. They have 40.7% of their fly balls as a team have been to the opposite field, and that is the lowest, or that is the fourth highest, excuse me, in the majors. So that's definitely a big part of it as well, because they have a very good average exit velocity on fly balls, but they're not getting a lot to show for it. That's because they're not hitting them to the right place. Their timing is off, and that kind of goes with the bat speed stuff that I mentioned earlier. They're not getting it through the zone quick enough. They're not making the right kind of contact. And I think where you hit the ball is more about timing than it is bat speed, but it can play a factor. And the Cubs,
yeah.
those are two things that they've struggled with in this time.
Yeah, yeah. And despite this run and despite the Cubs being under 500, they are still in a playoff spot. So it seems like,
Well, that says more about the National League than it does the
yeah,
Cubs.
what I'm saying is I think that NL wild card is going to be, another one of the classic battle of mid memes.
Yeah, we are going to have the 78 win like Pittsburgh Pirates in the World Series.
Yes, yeah, they're gonna, you know, Paul Skeens, Paul Skeens and the Dodgers will meet again, and it will be in the playoffs.
I was gonna say you put the Pirates in a playoff series and you make a team face Skeens, Jones, and Keller.
Oh yeah, I
And
mean,
that's
a best 2 out of 3, man.
yeah,
That's a tough top two to go against.
that is not yeah. Like you better hit. Your pitching better lock it down.
Yeah,
I
because
guess the good thing is that they're both fastball pitchers and you can luck your way into a couple home runs because that's what wins playoff games.
true. Yeah, that is a factor. Um, yeah. So yeah, the Cubs they've been struggling as of late, but I don't think it's really going to affect their playoff odds that much. Maybe their NL Central odds a little bit, but we're kind of all waiting for the Brewers to come down to earth a little bit.
The Brewers are BABIPing 286 on ground balls.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, as a team.
Um,
They also have the luckiest difference on expected batting average versus batting average on line drives.
okay. Yeah, that makes
Because
sense.
I did a deep dive into the Brewers a couple nights ago because if you look at their offense from like every year from 2021 through 24, like everything looks the same on Fangraphs in terms of like ISO, strikeout rate, walk rate, all of that, except their BABIP is way up this year. I think they're BABIPing like 319 as a team or something like that.
Yeah, and if I recall correctly, they don't really have many speedsters on that team.
No, but they are not swinging a lot. Their like take rate is like one of the highest like in the Statcast era of any team,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
interesting.
interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, is their walk rate high this year at all or no?
I think it's like third highest in the league.
Okay, so yeah, that does help them out a little bit. But yeah, the
Yeah.
319
That
BABIP.
that is the thing that you can point to, but the 286 BABIP on ground balls is probably going to go down.
Yeah, and 319 in general, when league averages usually in the low 290s that is something to beware of for sure.
Okay,
Um,
it's 314 now. Still.
314, still high
Still.
for a team that's played, probably 60 plus games. Yeah, it's a bit
61,
high.
yeah.
Um,
They've
yeah,
also
so,
stolen 81 bases. That's
um,
the third most in the league. The Nationals are almost at 95 stolen bases as a team.
I guess the Brewers have more speed than I gave them credit for. Um,
Yeah. Well, yeah, it makes sense. They have like Tarang's playing a bigger role this year. Frelick is playing a bigger role this year. Who's stealing bases for them this year? Bryce Tarang is number one. With Bryce Tarang is 21. Yelich, Adames, and Frelick all have 8. Jake Bowers has 7. Chorio has 7. Uh, yeah.
but yeah, anything more before we talk about our final subject before players to highlight?
Well, let's get into the Negro Leagues.
Yeah, want to intro this topic because I feel like you were more
Yeah,
into it.
I would love to. Yeah, so Major League Baseball announced last week that uh, all numbers that we have access to from the Negro Leagues are going to be incorporated into MLB's official record books. The main takeaways from this is that Josh Gibson is now the all-time leader in batting average and OBP, or not in OBP. I think OBP still belongs to Babe Ruth. Slugging and or Ted Williams has OBP, slugging and OPS. And this is a move that shocked a lot of people. But I mean, I think if you want to boil, there's a lot of conversation to be had about what this means and how to interpret it. I think if you were to just break it down into four simple words, it's the correct move. Because Negro Leagues are major leagues. They always have been major leagues. And, MLB has ignored it for a while. There's a lot to say. I'm trying to think of the right words right now, but the difference between the Negro Leagues and other professional leagues overseas or in different the Negro Leagues existed because the very specifically denied opportunity that would have made the most sense for them, which was to play in the American or National Leagues. It's a very well documented exclusion that Major League Baseball made for about 70 years before they finally decide to start slightly leaving the door ajar for guys like Jackie Robinson and Larry Doby and a couple others before the floodgates eventually opened. There's been a lot of discussion over how to evaluate the Negro Leagues in terms of talent in comparison to the major leagues. And I don't really think there's much of a reason for that. I mean, there's no difference between players of different skin colors now. I don't think there's any reason to believe that there would have been in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, and 50s and 60s. The only difference might be that some players got access to better training than others, but that's a byproduct of Major League Baseball shutting out a large part of the population. So ultimately, I think this is the correct move. I think any and all recognition of the Negro Leagues should be celebrated, but I also think that the fact that it existed in the first place is probably something that we shouldn't be proud of as a sport. But regardless, it's a thing that happened. It's something that we can't just ignore. We have to acknowledge that it was a thing and the reason it was a thing. And I think the correct thing to do is celebrate it as you would celebrate anything else from that time.
Yeah, for sure. That's well said, and it should be, yeah, it should obviously be recognized not only because of the league's significance, but I feel like the talent pool was similar, if not better, in the Negro Leagues at the time, and it was baseball, especially with baseball at the time, probably being the most popular sport in America. Not that I have any numbers to back that up, but I feel like it had the edge over sports like football and basketball at that time. And obviously there was a stacked talent pool over there, and it we saw that by the immediate results after integration. Like the best, when you think about the best players of the 50s and 60s, outside of like Mickey Mantle and Duke Snider, it's Willie Mays, Frank Robinson, Roberto Clemente, even like Minnie
Hank Aaron.
Minoso, Hank Aaron. Obviously, yeah, how could I forget Hank Aaron? Like they immediately took over the league and became some of the greats of all time. And when you think about, if you're making a list of top 10, top 20 baseball players, it is a lot of African American players, even though they didn't, they weren't allowed to play in what was known for a long time as the major leagues, but technically the American League and National League, they weren't allowed to play for now like about half of its existence, or at least the National League's existence. So yeah, obviously the talent pool was there, and it was very competitive over there. So yeah, those stats should count. I will note that I've been reading a little bit of Joe Posnanski's The Baseball 100. Started out as a series on The Athletic, and the great Amy Crawford gave it to me as a book. I've read the first. I'm not a big reader, but I've read the first 40 players on there, so 100 through 61. And he talks about some Negro League players, and part of the thing he says about, oh, we don't know too much, and part of it is just it wasn't really tracked that hard. It wasn't tracked as hard as American League and National League games. They also just had there were just more like, there was more flexibility in what Negro League teams did. Sometimes they would just play games that weren't originally scheduled, or they'd play like triple headers or something like that. And just things weren't really tracked really to a fine a point as they were in the American League and National League. So we kind of have these numbers. Maybe they are accurate, maybe they aren't, but in the end, we get to kind of, relish in the greatness of a lot of these athletes that, weren't getting the proper recognition before.
Something that I've seen a lot of on the internet is people saying like, well, Josh Gibson only played 600 games. How can you compare that with, with Babe Ruth, who played like 2 to 3,000 games? And it's like, well, Josh Gibson played 600 games that we know of. He absolutely played more than just that. And you know what? If we ever had Josh Gibson's complete stats, we'd find out that Babe Ruth did have a higher OPS, or that he did have a higher batting average. But we don't have that. And again, that's a byproduct of Major League Baseball shutting out black players for 70 years. So, if you have a problem with it, like the root of the cause is Kennesaw Mountain Landis, Cap Anson, several others. Those are, I think the two that get the most recognition for it. And yeah, I mean, it is unfortunately very incomplete data, but it's still pretty cool to look at Josh Gibson and see what an 1172 OPS.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And it's believable. It's not like they're saying, oh, he slugged 2000. Like that's not that's not the case. It's a pretty realistic number. It's what I imagine the league greats were doing at the time. And people, it's not like it's some random guy we never heard of. Josh Gibson is known as, probably the greatest Negro League player of all time. So him having those numbers, it makes a good bit of sense. He was, the Negro League's Babe Ruth, which is why he has Babe Ruth like numbers. So yeah, it's not like it was some random person that a lot of people hadn't heard of. It's Josh Gibson. We know about Josh Gibson.
Yeah, I think something that I'm excited for with this recognition and this move is hopefully more Negro Leaguers that are going to get a lot more recognition, because I think when you ask the average baseball player to name as many Negro Leaguers as they can, you're going to hear Josh Gibson, you're going to hear Satchel Paige, but you might hear a lot of people stopping after that point, because those are the main two. Those are that's the best one, and also the best one that also sort of translated to Major League Baseball. Jackie Robinson as well, but I feel like most people even kind of don't really associate him as much with the Negro Leagues because he had such a lengthy Major League career, right? Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson are really the ones that you associate their success more with the Negro Leagues. But there are so many more. Like for every one of those, there's Cool Papa Bell, there's Ray Brown, who is a Hall of Famer. There's John Donaldson, who is one of the best pitchers ever, right? Like there's Oscar Charleston, who is who's like not very far behind Josh Gibson in success. Like there are so many. Bullet Joe Rogan was another one. Bullet Rogan was one.
Yeah, like there's for every great that people know, there's another one that
There's like 5 that people don't know.
Yeah, there's 5 that people don't know, exactly. So yeah, like having Baseball Reference prop these numbers up, and Major League Baseball recognize these numbers, it's at least a shout out, a long deserved shout out to the history of that league and the greatness that was in that league, because like we said, like they had to have it's hard to argue that the talent pool wasn't there. I would have to
Someone
imagine.
at someone at ESPN pointed this out. I wish I remembered the name of the person that pointed it out, but from 1947 through like 62, there were 14 players that won MVP honors in the National League, and 11 of them were black.
Right. Yeah.
Between like Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Frank Robinson, Maury Wills, Roy Campanella, like several others.
Yeah. When you like, um, like, yeah, when there was no time, how when, rookies are like, oh, there's needs to be some adjusting to the major leagues. There was no adjusting that was necessary in the major
No,
leagues to
no.
from the Negro leagues. It was not a step up. It was just a step, to the right or to the left. It was a it was a it was just sideways. It was just to another direction. It wasn't up. Like it was just another league of probably similar talent pool that they were playing in.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely. And another thing, how can we say Josh Gibson was the greatest of all time when he never faced pitcher X from his era? And you could, in the same breath, say, how come pitcher X was so good when he never faced Josh Gibson? Right? Like,
Yeah.
I think Josh Gibson was not allowed to face many of the best pitchers of his era because they were white and he was black, and many great white pitchers were not allowed to face guys like Josh Gibson, guys like Oscar Charleston, because they were white and they were black. Like all of it is incomplete. Like any player that played in any of those eras before 1947 predominantly, like they didn't face the best competition, whether it be in the Negro Leagues, whether it be in the major leagues.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's always that counterbalance because obviously the league was better when they were integrated and everyone was in the same spot. And it's not like, white players were completely, um what's the word? Like just completely
Across the board
washed out.
better.
Like
Yeah, oh yeah.
they weren't, they weren't taken out of the league. There were still great white players, still great black players. So them integrating was made
And look at
for
like Ted Williams.
a better major league product. So
Yeah.
um so yeah, like for every guy that were it's like, yeah, Josh Gibson never faced, I don't know, like Carl Hubble or Bob Feller. Well, yeah, Bob Feller never faced Josh Gibson. So or yeah, or he didn't
Lefty
face Josh.
Grove.
Yeah, Josh Gibson particularly. Yeah, Lefty Grove, Carl Hubble. Yeah. Um, but yeah, looking at I think the wins above replacement leaders from 1953 to 1970. I picked 1953 because I think that's when just I feel like it was all kind of everybody was in the league after that. Number one in wins above replacement, Willie Mays. Number two, Hank Aaron. Number five, Frank Robinson. Number seven, Roberto Clemente. Number eight, Ernie Banks. So yeah, that's four of the top eight would not be allowed, if they were born 20 years earlier. So obviously the talent pool was there.
Yeah, I mean it was there, and it's maybe it's a little late for MLB to have made this decision, but regardless, it was made. So I mean, it's the right thing to do, regardless of because I mean the reality is like there was no way that MLB was going to correctly right this wrong because it's not like anyone that currently works with Major League Baseball in the front offices or anyone that was involved in this decision making to include the Negro Leagues had any involvement in what happened in the 40s and before that. So, it is good to see the recognition. And like I said, I think any recognition of the Negro League should be celebrated and care as possible. Another guy that didn't play in the Negro Leagues, but I think is going to be a little more uplifted from this is a guy that I've had the fortune to have learned a lot about in the last few months, which is Bud Fowler. He was the first Black professional player. He played in primarily the 1870s and 80s. And he did play on a couple all-white teams. He was kicked off of a team in Binghamton after 2 months of playing there because his teammates petitioned for his removal from the team, not because of his skill level, not because of his attitude or anything. We all know why. It's, I mean, you've heard the story before. Um, and he continued to live in Binghamton after his playing career because, there's unfortunately just nowhere where he could really be fully accepted at that time.
Right.
But like I said, he never got the opportunity to play in the Negro Leagues, unfortunately, because they didn't exist until 1920. That's another thing that I've kind of thought a lot about is, we have the fortune of being able to talk about guys like Josh Gibson, guys like Oscar Charleston, Bullet Rogan, Cool Pavel, because they did have the platform that was built by people like Buck O'Neill and many others. But there are guys from the 1870s through the 1910s that we might never know the names of, or we might never have experienced the full talent of because they didn't have the platform, because it wasn't all, and the Negro Leagues hadn't been founded yet.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, there's countless stories like that, unfortunately, due to, our, I guess American and human history in general. That's just kind of what led to all that. But, it's the least that we can do is, add some recognition now. And and retell those stories, or, prop up these statistics that MLB has decided to prop up. So, yeah, anything more on the subject?
I think that's all. Go learn about as much as you can about the Negro Leagues. If you don't know Josh Gibson, go learn Josh Gibson. If your knowledge of the Negro Leagues halts at Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige, go read about John Donaldson, go read about Oscar Charleston, Bullet Rogan, Ray Brown, several others. Yeah, go learn about the Negro Leagues. There's a lot to learn.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, so that does it for the, current events of the MLB. Now we will start off we'll start our players to highlight, starting off with the lows so that we can end with the highs. And we are going to go with our Wednesday, June 5th, 2024 edition of Slightly Alarming Statistics. He's been barreling up the ball way less.
He's not missing bats. He's not getting the ball on the ground, and people are hitting it in the air more.
It's been so bad. He is getting a
Slightly alarming.
Yeah, so for my slightly alarming today, I'm going with a full season sample because this guy did start out all right for the first couple weeks of the season, but around mid-April started sliding and even had a brief injury stint. I'm talking about Austin Riley, who is both of our, number two second base or third baseman.
correct in a lot of people's book, number one, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, I don't think that's going to hold up.
No, I don't think it's going to, because throughout 2024 so far, he is slashing 232, 302, 359 for a 661 OPS and an 89 weighted runs created plus. Coming into play today, his sweet spot rate was at a career low at 30.2%. Another thing that has declined is his average exit velocity on fly balls. It is at 91.9 miles per hour this year. That's the lowest for him in any season, and the previous low for him was 94.7 in each of the last three seasons, or that or higher. His previous low was in 2020 at 93, but it's by far his lowest since 2021, which is really when he started breaking out. Because of this decline in exit velocity on fly balls, his home run to fly ball ratio this year is just 8.6%. That is by far the lowest in his career. The previous low is 21.9% in 2020. His pull rate on fly balls is also just 20%. That is the lowest he has ever had in a full season, so it excludes 2020. Last year, Austin Riley saw fastballs at a 59.1% rate. And this year, that number is up to 64.8%. So he's seeing a lot more fastballs. And it's easy to understand why, because this year he is hitting 230 and slugging 336 against all fastballs when you consider four-seamers, cutters, and sinkers. But when you just consider four-seamers, it actually gets a lot worse. He is hitting 111 and slugging 190. Among the 187 hitters with at least 50 plate appearances ending on four-seamers this year, Riley has a -9 run value against him, and that ranks dead last on that list. His 3.1% run value per 100 also ranks tied for dead last. His average is the third worst. His slugging is the worst, and his 213 WOBA is the third worst. So Austin Riley has really not gotten it going in the last few months and really throughout this year entirely. He did have a weird stint where he left a game with left side tightness on May 12th and didn't come back until May 27th. And in that time, he never actually went on the IL, which was pretty weird. So that could be a part of it. But he's only played a few games since then, and he was also struggling for a month before he left that game.
Austin Riley.
Slightly alarming.
Obviously kind of a bona fide hitter, very, unquestionably very consistent hitter the 3 years coming into this. So it is, I feel like when we've talked about Austin Riley and struggles, it hasn't necessarily been with the bat ever. It's been more defense, but yeah, it's weird to see him struggle with the bat. My slightly alarming is about a different third baseman. Wasn't my top 10, but I'm sure was in consideration for it. But I'm talking about Eugenio Suarez of the Arizona Diamondbacks. In his last 38 games, and that this stat includes today, where he went 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts. But in his last 38 games, he is hitting 163 with a 482 OPS. Out of 166 qualifiers in his 37-game span heading into Wednesday, his average ranks third lowest, on-base percentage ranks third lowest, slugging ranks third lowest, and OPS is second lowest. Out of 138 hitters with 500-plus pitches seen in this span heading into Wednesday, his expected batting average is second lowest, expected slugging is third lowest, and expected WOBA is second lowest. So very on par with the on-the-surface stats. Part of this has to do with his strikeout rate going from 25% before the span to 32% in this span. Out of 166 qualifiers heading into Wednesday, his strikeout rate is 12th highest. His average exit velocity has also gone from 88.8 miles per hour to 85.7 miles per hour, which is not what you want to see from a power hitter like Eugenio Suarez. And out of 138 hitters out of 138 hitters, his average exit velocity is 5th lowest. Very, very alarming. Also, his sweet spot rate has gone from 44% before the span to 30% in the span. And entering this year, he had a barrel rate of 13% or higher every year since 2019. That's 5 consecutive years. This year, overall, that barrel rate is 6.7%. So Eugenio Suarez striking out a good bit, but also probably more alarmingly so, because we don't expect this out of Suarez, hitting the ball soft and not hitting hard fly balls. So that has resulted in a 482 OPS in 38 games. Eugenio Suarez.
Slightly alarming.
All right, so now we go from the lows to the highs, where we are going to be talking players that are outperforming expectations with our Wednesday, June 5th, 2024 edition of How About That?
He's striking out less, walking more, and he's also making better contact.
Turning into a strikeout machine just out of nowhere.
He's been excellent all around this year.
And he is getting a...
How about that?
Yeah, so from my How About That today, I'm talking about someone that I kind of alluded to during our Brewers tangent. I'm talking about Joey Ortiz, who was one of the returning pieces in the Corbin Burnes trade, and it's worked out really nicely for Milwaukee this year. Since April 26th, Joey Ortiz is slashing 305, 400, 571 for a 971 OPS, a 172 weighted runs created plus, and 1.7 FWAR. Among the 169 qualifiers in this span, he ranks 12th in batting average, 6th in OBP, 8th in slugging, 7th in weighted runs created plus, and tied for 7th in FWAR. Before the span, his sweet spot rate in the season was just 12.5%. That was the lowest among the 327 hitters with at least 25 batted balls before April 26th. And in this span, he has jumped it up to 33.3%. So that's a 22-point difference almost. Before this span, his line drive rate was 17.5%. In this span, it is up to 27.8%. It's gone up over 10%. And also before the span, his average exit velocity on line drives and fly balls was just 86.5 miles per hour. And in the span, he has jumped it up to 93.9 miles per hour, which is a pretty significant gain. Throughout this span, Joey Ortiz has swung at just 38.9% of all pitches thrown to him, which is tied for the 8th lowest rate among the 178 hitters with at least 400 total pitches seen since April 26th. 16.2% of his swings have been blasts. That is the 19th highest rate among the 217 qualifying hitters. He has an average bat speed in the span of 75.5 miles per hour, which ranks 15th highest on that same list. And coming into today, Joey Ortiz is the only qualified hitter in Major League Baseball to have an average bat speed, strikeout rate, and walk rate all in the top 85 percentile. So he has a really impressive skill set of putting the ball in play, walk bat hard, which translates into hitting the ball hard. And because of that, he's been one of the best hitters in the entire league and a really nice return piece for Milwaukee for Corbin Burnes, giving them kind of an offensive profile that they've lacked for the last few years.
Yeah, Joey Ortiz. Yeah, I mean, usually in a deal like that, you got to wait a couple years for the return pieces to, make their effect, but it is immediate so far. So good for the Brewers. Good for
How crazy is it that he could have just been another young Oriole?
Yeah,
like just doing the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think they just got rid of him because they didn't have room on the field.
Yeah.
That's probably part of it. Yeah, how about that is another team from the Midwest. Another player from a team from the Midwest. I don't know what this guy's on, but David Fry is absolutely
Thank God.
Is absolutely
Thank God. It was way too long.
Yeah.
And I was going to do him, but then I found Ortiz and I was like, I'm just gonna bank on Chris going with David Fry. So I'm glad you did.
Yeah. David Fry has been lighting the world on fire for absolutely no reason, but he is just, I don't know what he's up to, but in his last 16 games, he's on the Guardians, by the way. In his last 16 games, he is hitting 400 with a 557 on base percentage and 1380 OPS out of 208 hitters with 60 plus plate appearances in the span heading into Wednesday. David Fry's on base percentage ranks first, and his average slugging and OPS ranks second behind Aaron Judge. Out of 237 hitters with 200 plus pitches seen in the span, his expected batting average ranks fourth, expected slugging ranks seventh, and expected WOBA ranks fourth. In this span, David Fry has an 8% strikeout rate and 20% walk rate. If you flip those two, it would still be a good strikeout and walk rate, but no, he has an 8% strikeout rate and 20% walk rate. Out of 208 hitters, his strikeout rate is third lowest and walk rate is fourth highest in a sample of over 200. And his walk to strikeout ratio leads those 208 hitters in this span heading into Wednesday. Much of this part, or at least part of this, has to do with his 22% called strike and whiff rate against him. And out of 237 hitters, that called strike and whiff rate is 10th lowest. With 2 strikes, David Fry has a 6.4% called strike and whiff rate. Out of 273 hitters to reach 2 strikes 50 plus times in this span heading into Wednesday, Fry has the third lowest called strike and whiff rate on 2 strikes. And then along with that, his contact is also elite. In this span, Fry also has a 91.9 mile per hour average exit velocity, 43% sweet spot rate, 30% line drive rate, 30% fly ball rate, and 13% barrel rate, which are all above average. Those are just numbers you don't see with that strikeout and walk ratio, but he is doing it all at the same time. Even if it's in 16 games, it's a pretty big miracle coming out of the Cleveland outfield for this to happen. So David Fry, he is getting A.
David Fry answers the question, what if a guy was elite at every single aspect of offense that you could think of?
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty unreal what he's doing. So
47.1% pull rate this year, by the way.
That too, that also helps.
My goodness.
I didn't even bother to look at the batted ball direction, considering how good everything else was. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm sure that part's average, but no, it's not. So yeah, that does it for players to highlight. And we will close this out with some Savant trivia. And yeah, it'll be. I'm kind of just I'm kind of following your themes. So the first one I did was like video based, guessing based off of a tiny bit of information. This one is going to be sort of a guessing game, writing out your own list. So we know who kind of the elite um hard hitters of today are, but I figured, let's go back to when the Statcast era started. And I'll put, when we start this, I'll put 8 minutes on the clock. I think that's
Okay.
a fair thing. 8 minutes on the clock to name the top 10 hitters in average exit velocity in the 2015 season. It is a
In the
minimum.
2015 season. Oh gosh.
It is a minimum of 1,500 plus pitches. If you guess a guy that didn't get that number of pitches, it won't count as a guess. You'll get another, you get to do another one. I'll give you that information because obviously you can't look up a guy if a guy had that many pitches, because then you'd be able to see his average exit velocity. But highest average, the top 10 in average exit velocity. Let's see how many you can get. And feel free to write some extras in, because or actually the biggest bit of information I have for this is Giancarlo Stanton was injured that year and did not reach 1,500 plus pitches. So
That's big.
So he will not be included in this list. That's something it would be unconstitutional if I didn't say that. But feel free to say some extra, but I'll put 8 minutes on the clock and I will reinvite when you're finished.
Okay.
All right, 3, 2, 1. And the 8 minutes have passed, and yeah, it's time to figure out, like, all right, who was these top 10. The first year, 2015 is significant because it was the first year that we were tracking this, but the top 10 in average exit velocity in 2015 out of hitters that saw 1,500 plus pitches. So probably if you had anything under 400 plate appearances or under like 350 plate appearances, you're probably out of this. But so yeah, if you pick a guy and I command F him and he didn't get that much, it'll be just, you get another guess. But here we go. Who would you? Yeah, we'll just go one at a time with this. So who was your first guess at the top 10?
Can I get Bryce Harper?
Harper. He was 21st. That's
This is gonna be a rough one.
All right. What is your second guess?
Can I get Mike Trout?
He's number 3. He is in the top 10.
All right. Should I just go? Do I get 10 guesses or?
You get you get 10 guesses.
Okay. Can I get Nelson Cruz?
He is number 4.
All right, perfect. Can I get Josh Donaldson?
He is number 5.
Okay, I have 3, 4, and 5. I have no confidence that I got 1 or 2, to be completely honest. All right, yeah. Can I get Paul Goldschmidt?
He is unfortunately number 11.
Wow. Wow, of course I was going to get number 11, right?
Yeah.
Can I get Encarnacion?
Did he get to 1,500 pitches? He is unfortunately number 55.
Oh no. All right, can I get David Ortiz?
He's number 2.
Okay. I'm
So,
definitely not gonna. I don't think I got number 1. I'm gonna be honest.
4 for 7 so far.
All right. Can I get Yoenis Cespedes?
He is number 7.
Okay.
5 for 8.
for
You're doing
8.
very well. You're doing very well, I will say.
5 for 8. All right. Can I get Yasiel Puig?
Let's see if he's in here. It doesn't look like he reached that many pitches.
Okay,
So
cool.
that is a nullified guess.
Excellent. Excellent. Can I get Jose Batista?
He is number 10.
All right.
There we go.
6. And I get one more guess, right?
Yep.
I don't feel confident in either of these guesses at all. Can I get Carlos Gonzalez?
See if he's in here. There's a lot of Gonzalez's, I guess.
Yeah.
There's Adrian Gonzalez was number 106, so it's not Adrian. Carlos Gonzalez, number 45.
Dang. All right. My one remaining guess that I didn't throw out there was Kendrys Morales.
Oh, he might have been in there. Oh no, he was number 12.
Oh wow. Okay. That was a pretty good guess then.
Yeah, for sure.
So I missed what? Numbers 1, 6, 8, 9.
Yeah, and it's understandable.
Can I get
what?
This won't count. Can I get teams?
Okay, yeah, sure. Do you want just 4 teams or the number or the numbers associated with those teams?
Just give me the 4 teams. I'll try to match the numbers to the teams.
Tigers, Brewers, Orioles.
Was one of them Machado?
No.
Okay, good, because I thought about him. Oh, is one of them Chris Davis?
Yeah.
Duh. Was he number 1?
He's number 8.
Okay. Chris Davis. Is one of them Adam Jones?
Nope.
No. Who on the Orioles was there? No, it's not Chris Davis. It's not Nelson. Oh, Nelson Cruz was already gone. And it's not Chris Davis because they're listed. What other Orioles were there in 2015? Brewers and Tigers were the other ones?
Yeah.
For Tigers, can I get Miguel Cabrera?
He was number 1, surprisingly
Really?
enough. Yeah.
Okay, wow. I actually thought of him. I was like, no, like he wasn't as good that year. The Tigers finished last.
If we upped the parameters to 2,000 plus pitches, he would not be on the list. He had 1,985 pitches seen.
Gotcha.
So we probably just didn't get a lot of plate appearances.
The Brewers, because that was post Prince Fielder. Was it Braun?
It was Braun, yeah.
Ah.
Ryan Braun was number 6.
Interesting. So I'm missing one Oriole.
Yeah.
I'm going through the 2015 Orioles lineup in my head. So catcher was what, like Caleb Joseph or something like that?
Yeah, I used him in a grid, I think. Yes.
Yeah. First base was Chris Davis. Second base, was that Scope?
He was not.
Or was that? I mean, I'm not saying that's my
Yeah.
guess, but like, was he second at the time? I think he was later. Shortstop was JJ Hardy. We did the 2014 Orioles, so I should know this. Third base was Machado.
If you'd like an extra hint, I can drop one.
What's that?
He may have platooned a little bit with Chris Davis.
So he was another first baseman. Mark Trumbo wasn't on the Orioles back then, was he?
No, it was.
Oh, it was Mark Trumbo.
He's number 9, yeah.
Oh, I thought he like became an Oriole in 16 for some reason. I remember he was on the Diamondbacks before.
That's the only year I remember him for either.
Yeah.
Or wait, maybe. Well, that's what his hat, or that's what was on his hat. He might.
Did he get traded mid-season? I don't think so.
It's when it's because on Savant, when you go on Statcast search, it just shows their.
It has him as a Mariner and Diamondback in 2015.
Yeah, I think okay. So Baseball Savant must have just made a clerical error because it
must be, maybe it's just the last team they played on.
Yeah, I don't know, but I guess I did give incorrect information there, but that was based on the hat I saw.
That's all right. I didn't count anyway. So I got 6 out of 10.
Yeah, 6 out of
So
10
I'll take that.
is very good for
I can't believe
you.
Bryce Harper was 21st.
Yeah, no, that's nuts. I guess it's a testament to his other numbers.
Yeah.
But yeah, like when you have the whole league to choose from, getting six in
And
the
you have to
top.
remember 9 years in the past who was good.
Yeah, yeah,
No, it
that's
was a fun blast of the past there, thinking about like who I was paying attention to in 8th grade.
right. Yeah. Um, but yeah, that does it for Savant Trivia, fourth edition of Savant Trivia. Um, hoping we're making it a weekly tradition.
Yeah.
Happy to be playing it probably 4 days from now. But yeah, any final thoughts before we head on out?
No, that's it for me this show.
All right, well, that shall do it for this installment of Above Replacement Radio. We hope you enjoyed this one. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, go to the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. Also, follow us on social media. Follow me on Twitter, @Chris_Gianta. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram, @Daniel_Kern. And follow the show Instagram, @Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time, where we will be talking all the happenings in Major League Baseball. Once again, see you then.
This conversation is over.